Do you have trouble making sure your container garden stays adequately watered while you are at work or on vacation? Maybe you have experienced root rot from overwatering your containers. You need to make a self-wicking container. Hello, this is Stephen from ShortSeasonGarden.com with tips and tricks for any garden, but especially in Gardening Zone 3 and other cold climate areas. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please do so now and make sure you hit the notification bell as well. Be sure also to go to ShortSeasonGarden.com and sign up for my newsletter. You can also check me out on Pinterest, Instagram, and Facebook at Short Season Garden. So today we are going to make a self-wicking container. Actually 13 self-wicking containers, but we'll start with just one. I obtained my empty containers from a company called Teflon Canada, but you can use any empty tub or 5-gallon pail, preferably one that still has a lid. There are ways to make wicking containers without using a lid, but we used the lid for ours. The basic idea is to have a reservoir for water at the bottom of the container and then provide a way to wick the water up to the plants as needed. First, you want to make a cross mark on the container 5 inches from the bottom. This is for an overflow drain hole because you want an airspace between the water reservoir and the soil containing the plant roots. Now measure up 6 inches from the bottom of the container and make a mark. Continue around the container marking 6 inches from the bottom. You should have one mark every 6 to 8 inches around the container. These are for screws to support the lid. Now come back to the cross made at the 5-inch mark and drill a 1/2-inch diameter drain hole to allow any excess water to escape from the reservoir so your plant will not be sitting in water. You will drive one screw into each spot you marked at 6 inches from the bottom of the container. This will make a good solid support for your lid. Since the reservoir will be very high humidity, we decided to use stainless steel 1.25-inch screws. If you can't find stainless steel, a second best choice would be deck screws, which are meant to endure wet weather. In our model, we used 4-inch diameter PVC pipe for the wicking portion of the container. Cut 2 6-inch sections of pipe to stand down in your water reservoir. Saw several notches into the bottom of each section to facilitate water seepage into the pipe. Using one section of pipe as a template, draw 2 circles on the lid, roughly equidistant from the center, and drill a starter hole on the perimeter of each circle to make it easier to start a cut. Since our lid was too large to fit down into the container, we had to saw off the rim of the lid. This video was taken after we experimented with several lids to get an exact fit. Next, saw out the 2 circles on the lid where the 6-inch sections of pipe are to stand. You will want to put a couple screws through the top of each section of pipe, the opposite end from the notches, to help support the center of the lid that will hold the soil. After standing the 2 sections of pipe in the bottom of the container, insert the lid to check for fit. The more snug the fit, the better. Now you need to make the fill pipe. For this, we used a 12-inch section of 1.25-inch PVC electrical conduit. You want the pipe to be long enough to extend from slightly above the top of the container down into the water reservoir. With the lid still in place inside the container, hold the fill pipe against the inside wall of the container and draw a circle around it on the lid. Removing the lid from the container, cut out the drawn circle. Reinsert the lid, putting the fill pipe so that one end is extended into the new hole in the lid and the other end is extended above the top of the container. Ideally, you want the fill pipe a few inches away from the overflow drain so the water doesn't spill out as you are filling the reservoir. Use a couple screws to secure the fill pipe to the container, placing one near the top of the pipe and one below the lid. You will need a piece of landscape fabric or old floating row cover or some other barrier that can be penetrated by water but not by soil. This is to keep the soil from escaping out into the water reservoir. Cut the barrier large enough that you can poke it down into the wicking pipes and still have enough to cover the lid and extend up the sides of the container. Make sure the barrier extends clear down to the bottom of the pipes because you want the water to be able to wick through the notches in the pipe into the soil. Now you are ready to fill your container with soil. You want to make sure the soil goes down to the very bottom of the pipes so the water will wick into it. Stretch out your cloth barrier so that it extends up the sides of the container, preventing soil from seeping through any cracks around the edge of the lid. And voila, your wicking container is ready to use. The concept, of course, is to fill the bottom reservoir with water, and the soil wicks it up to the plant roots as needed. The overflow drain hole 1 inch below the soil makes sure there is always an airspace between the water and the soil so the roots are not sitting in water. Now that we have made our model, it's time for some mass production. A handsaw works fine for a few cuts, but if you're making a bunch, you'll want some type of electric saw, preferably a table saw. Here we are cutting 12-inch sections of 1 1/4 pipe for our fill pipe. We like 1 1/4 because it's plenty big enough to hold a water hose, yet not too big. Next we start cutting our 6-inch sections of wicking pipe. You'll notice that we scrounged around and found various sections of old 4-inch pipe, some white, some black, some with drain holes, some without. It really doesn't matter. They are just a means for the water to wick into the soil going up to the plant roots. Next, we cut notches into the bottom of each 6-inch section of wicking pipe to make sure the water easily passes from the reservoir into the soil. We probably could get by without the notches, especially with our pieces of pipe that are perforated, but we make the notches anyway, just to be sure. Of course, each section of our pipe had to have screws inserted at the top to help support the weight of the soil at the center of the lid. To save time measuring for our 1/2-inch drain hole at 5 inches and our screws at 6 inches, we built a little jig. If you're only making 1 or 2 self-wicking pots, a tape measure works fine, but if you are making a lot, the time spent making the jig will pay off. We marked all our containers first. Then we went back and drilled a 1/2-inch drain hole in each and inserted the screws to support the lid. Once we have all the drain holes drilled and the screws in place, and we have 2 sections of wicking pipe in each container, we turn our attention to the lids. Again, using one of our 4-inch sections of pipe, or 4-inch pipe sections rather, as a template, we draw circles for the 2 holes in each lid and drill starter holes for our jigsaw. Once all the lids are marked, we cut the rim of each to make sure it fit down in the container, and then cut out the 2 circles for the wicking pipe. The last part of the construction for each container is the fill pipe. Now all that is left to do is to put the fabric barrier in each self-wicking container and then fill them all with soil. This summer, your container plants will thank you. No more worrying about overwatering or underwatering. Just make sure the reservoir at the bottom of the container always has water, and your pot will wick up the soil to the plants as they need it. Container gardening has never been easier.